just delighted and excited. We really think you can be the fastest cyclist in the world.
Those first 3 to 6 hours, I was like floating on air. My heart rate was perfect. My effort felt perfect. I was doing more watts than I expected. It just everything felt right, and I felt smooth on the bike. And yeah, I was going 27.8 miles per hour for almost 200 miles.
I'm so glad to see you this morning. You're looking a little fresher than the last time I saw you.
Yeah, feeling a little bit fresher. Like muscles are still sore. I'm gonna actually get out on the bike a little bit today too.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it was funny as we left, seeing you just kind of weaving around trying to find a bed. Yeah. First, let me just say, we're incredibly in the afterglow of your incredible performance has not worn off here at Cruzbike headquarters. We're just delighted with what you were able to do. We suspected that if we could get a good, strong rider on the bike, amazing things would happen. And you have been, I mean, you're of course incredibly talented and professional in every way, but it's been really exciting for us to see what the bike can do in the hands of an incredibly talented and professional person. I was chatting about this with my daughter. We were just talking about the times that she supported me, and it's never as organized or as well thought through in the with my events as it was with yours. So thank you for bringing your A game to Sebring.
Yeah,
Um, so
yeah, I think
yeah.
that's one of my we maybe won't get too much into this today, but I think that's one of my specialities. I'm very type A, very organized, and I have a wife that fits that as well. So we can accomplish quite a few things with that mentality. But what it means is that, I mean, we look over every detail, and I've just learned every second counts in those situations, and it all stacks up. That every time that you're off just a little bit, if you're off in 15 different ways, that seconds off the clock, and it makes you that much slower and less efficient and much more to stress about. So
Yeah.
yeah, starting really at Race Across the West, I had a really good crew, and I mean, we meticulously planned that thing out, and I think that really gave us a prize that was worth going for again and again and again, because it really showed us just how good you could do if you had everything in a row, and if the a game really came to be. And of course, my other mentality with it is something's going to go wrong, and you don't want stuff in your control to go wrong on top of the other things that are going to go wrong outside of your control. So control your controllables and let the other things figure themselves out.
I think what makes you sort of unique is that you think way ahead of most people in terms of the things that you can control. And yeah, so anyway, it was fun to be part of that and to watch that. But yeah, I would love to talk to you. Jim and I were just mentioning that you've only had a cruise bike for 6 months. I mean, I think we sent the
Yeah.
frame set to you 6 months ago, and you've really done amazing things with it already. Set so many world records, and now 600. What's your official finish mileage at Sebring? 613.
612.38.
Okay,
Yeah.
612.38.
You know, they
American.
get all precise with
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So
Well, it's important. So I'd love for you to talk about your kind of your experience. We came to you because we saw how talented you were as an upright road cyclist and what you did Sebring last year. And we'd hoped that we've been looking for a person who would be interested in and using both platforms, the upright and a recumbent. And so we're really grateful for that. So I'm really interested in hearing or having you tell people about your experience in learning cruise bike and then also in using both platforms.
yeah, yeah, I'd be glad to speak to that a little bit. And I really wanted to have this conversation directly afterwards to talk about the aftermath of a 24-hour cruise bike versus a 24-hour time trial. And I'll just kind of say it upright that right now it's a lot better. Like after being on an upright for 24 hours, the neck, the back, in addition to all the muscle pain, you have to sort all those out and feel all that. I with Infinity Seat, I've figured out the saddle issues that many people have, and so I've been very glad about that. but just the neck and the back and all the additional joint pain, and I always ended up with like blisters and
Hmm.
stuff along my forearms. And it's not to say that I'm completely unscathed, but like surprisingly unscathed from the cruise bike, and way more pleasant for the aftermath. So I wanted to speak to that.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that since we're on that subject right now. So I, we always talk about with cruise bike, there's good pain and bad pain. And, we
Yeah,
like the kind of pain that you have after an event where your muscles, I'm sore. I only did, half the 6 hour with Jim, but muscle soreness. That's natural, but no, what I would call, musculoskeletal bad pain.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I mean, if you push yourself, you hope to hurt, and you hope to have a little bit of recovery because you know you're coming to your limits, even though
yeah.
you have no limits. And so yeah, so talk about specifically. I mean, you said what causes that pain in your neck in an upright bike or back or whatever. What causes that?
Yeah, so the magic I feel of the cruise bike is that you can be in a really aero position without forcing your body into it too much. Like there are some things you can still do by making sure your arms and hands and your holding position and your head's in the right position. There's a little bit of things. But on the TT bike, if you want to be the most aero, which you can be, we have numbers to show that I'm just about as aero on the TT bike as I am on the cruise bike, and I haven't even perfected it still. There's some crazy things people do. I mean, here's just a glimpse at it. I know that the top TT riders tape their shoulders together to make them more narrow, because when you're in that TT position, your head and then your shoulders narrow. So if you can do this scrunch thing, you can see my shoulders out here and
Yeah.
then my shoulders in here. When they're doing their high TT efforts, they're scrunched like this. So I know that Remco and some of the top TT riders right now, they're not only training that on the bike and doing muscular work outside of the bike to do it, they're actually taping their shoulders together to bring that in. So on my 24-hour efforts, I don't get that crazy because you can't do that for 24 hours. But you still do want your head down. You want your chin tucked down as low as you can. You want your shoulders as narrow as you can get them while still being comfortable. You want your arms up in the right position so they're blocking the air around your head. So there's so many fine tunements that you have to do for TT to make it that aero, and then you have to hold it for 24 hours. And having done it, it's miserable, especially at my indoor event where I really refined my aero position. Hours 18 through 22 were just agonizingly screaming in my head, sit up, stand up, like get out of position, like this hurts, I don't want to do this anymore. And on the cruise bike, I any 24-hour event, you kind of have a similar stop. Like, you don't want to do this anymore. It's time to sleep. It's time to be done. But it wasn't because of, like you said, that musculoskeletal or like uh, joint or tendon pains. It was just like my legs are tired, and I had this foot issue that was a separate aside from the two comparisons. But yeah, the TT pain is just you're holding your neck up, you're scrunched over in this position, your back's in an unnatural position. Like everything about the TT bike is just scrunched over tight. And on the cruise bike, you're laying back, you're kind of relaxed. Like I really feel like once you get control of the bike, you can just tell yourself to like let go and not tighten up. So I drop my shoulders down, I can feel everything kind of loosen up, and you're just free flowing, and you're aero still, which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what that's been, of course, my experience as well. And I do wonder, I think you're so disciplined that your ability to maintain your power, even when your mind is screaming in a TT position, I want to get up, get up, get up. But I think for most people, the psychological energy that you save not
Yeah,
having to really keep yourself in an uncomfortable position for a long time, you can put into the pedals. And
yeah,
and so it doesn't become such an effort to keep up your power. And that's
totally.
yeah, yeah. I don't have
I have a great example
okay.
for that. I always use this to show just how powerful the brain is. My background is in mental health, and so I think a big part of my ability on the bike has been that I came from this mental strengthening, mental fortitude background. And I learned a while back that chess players that are in these big top level tournaments will burn as many calories as an elite marathon runner while they're in a chess tournament for
Wow.
the same amount of time.
Right.
They put these monitors on them and they monitored their heart rate and their metabolic burn and everything. And they found their heart rate average and their burn is the exact same. And so they did that because we know that from other testing, your brain takes about 20 to 30% of your caloric need anyway, just on a normal daily basis to make all of the functions of your body work. So they were curious, when you're really using your brain, does it use more energy? And they found yes. When you are thinking critically and you are problem solving and you are going through all this stuff, your brain takes more energy out of you. So there's it's scientific as well that yeah, if you are more stressed out, if you are thinking more, you're going to be burning more in addition to the power you could be putting into the bike. So having a position where you can just really ride and focus on putting power into the pedals, I think definitely not only helps physically but mentally,
I think
which
that's
then ends
great.
up helping physically.
Yeah, yeah, that's of course wonderful. We know that, but it's wonderful here to hear you say it because you have such great experience on in long TT rides. So yeah, so let's get to. I want to talk specifically about kind of the ways you see that cruise bike is different from the TT bike, but I do want to talk about the transition um, because one of the things you and I think a lot of other people would like to do is have ride both, and there's just no reason why in the world why you can't be we talk about it like snowboard versus skiing. You might have your favorite but you can do both.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about just your curiosity and why you decided it would be okay to ride a recumbent and how you've transitioned in these last 6 months to doing both.
Yeah, I think like when you said ski board versus snowboarding, I think like the comparison in my head is your vehicle of travel.
Yeah,
Like you don't take your big dually truck for your race course records. Vehicles serve different purposes, and even ones that are in similar categories still specialize. Like a race car for the track is going to have slightly different setup than a race car for an open road type of thing. And I think that that's exactly what made me, when you guys approached me and said, "Hey, what do you think about cruise bike?" And I took a look. I thought, "Hey, there's some races and some specific records and things that would be really interesting to see how that bike could do because it's really, really good at a few things, and which makes it during any like long ultra events also a contender because it's really good at a couple things, and that mostly is the flatland aero like TT just as fast as you can in a certain time or as fast as you can cover a certain distance. And so I was super interested to do that. And then you do the math on something like RAM, for example, and with how much time you spend in flatland in RAM, I think that these bikes could potentially be the fastest RAM bike as well. I haven't sat down and crunched all the numbers, but I mean, you're in the mountains for a quarter or if that of the whole event. I haven't, like I said, I don't. Maybe you know better since
yeah,
you've
jim
you've
jim
done
has
that,
done
but
definitely crunched the numbers. Yeah, that's
yeah.
and it's not just flats, it's descending. This bike is a
Oh yeah,
fabulous
true.
descender, and climbing it's
Yeah.
not terrible. It's definitely a little bit
No.
slower because of the weight and different, but absolutely.
It's I found that as people comment back on social media, one of the first things that most people say is, "How does it climb?"
Oh,
They assume that it can't climb,
yeah.
and some people I joke around with, and I say, "Well, you point it at a hill and you
Yeah,
pedal." Like that's
exactly.
it. Like it. Once you get good at it, it actually works out pretty good. And I found on climbs you can actually sit up,
Yeah,
and it feels really kind of natural. I haven't done anything over about 11 or 12%, and I've heard a couple riders who ride them in a lot of situations say that when you get to maybe 15, 18%, especially if there's stuff on the road, your front wheel can
it
slip because you're
absolutely does
pulling so
at
much
those levels.
gravity backwards.
Mhm.
So there's some limitations, but that's where I said the car example, right? Like you don't take your racetrack car on, dirt.
Yeah,
And so if you're going to be doing a course that is primary climbing, yeah, this bike you count out and you ride one of your other bikes, which is exactly what you said. why not ride them all?
Right.
Why not have a gravel bike and a TT bike and a cruise bike for different situations if you're able to? But I think the beauty of these too is that you have the different models that if you really do like it, you could also just plug into the system and ride it in most situations, including adventure,
Yeah.
dirt maybe.
Yeah, and we thank you for saying that. Yeah, we sell bikes that are much more geared towards adventure with suspension and so forth. And when you
Mm-hmm.
think about it, road bikers especially love the toughness of a steep hill. But what
Mm-hmm.
percentage of your riding is over 10%? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I did ram and on the bike and
Yep.
I was able to climb every hill. And one thing that, as you suggested, that you can do is change your position, similar to an upright bike, where an upright bike you're in the saddle or you're standing. On a cruise bike, you can lay back or sit forward, and sometimes you want to do that because you're using different muscle groups. I remember climbing up Wolf Creek Pass, I was back and forward, because I got, as certain muscles got fatigued. But yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. The climbing question is a good one. We are, because of the front wheel drive, we do climb better than any other recumbent bike. So there's just no question that we can climb. Yeah. I ride with
Yeah.
my roadie friends all the time, and they love to take me up these steep hills, and yeah, they usually beat me for
Yeah.
sure.
The chain efficiency and tightness and everything really makes it, the pedaling flow actually was really familiar moving over to the bike.
Okay, good to hear.
There's a lot that we can talk about in terms of what was not familiar and what had a huge
Yeah,
learning curve. But I was pleasantly surprised that you have most of the same components, most of the same like bike stuff that makes the bike a bike. You use all the same things, so there's not a huge learning curve for like mechanics or yeah, like in terms of how your chain feels or what teeth you can use or all of that's really transferable. And then so basically you just kind of got to learn how to balance on your back and how to
yeah.
pedal on it, and you're good to go.
How do you feel about one of the things that we thought we noticed is that when we because of the front wheel drive, you really have to have a very smooth pedal stroke. Your right, left's got to be, and so
Yeah.
some people have said that actually conveyed well over into riding a traditional bike. They felt like that they'd learned better how to pedal from their
Mhm.
experience on a cruise bike. When you go
Yeah.
from a cruise bike to back to your traditional bike, is there like a minute where you're like, okay, what am I doing?
There is, especially when I do long blocks, but I've been doing every other day in my training because I do have a lot of upright riding I want to do this year as well. So I've been splitting it, which is actually nice for like muscle group and training as well because you're using slightly different muscles. So it's almost like in the gym where you do, leg day, arm day, but it's all of course legs in this case, but it's different parts of the legs. But in terms of the feel, smooth is fast. If you are kind of moving all around, you're punching through the air differently and you're wasting energy, right? You want all of your energy to be going towards those pedal strokes. Anything outside of that that's either holding you too tight or you're moving all over the place, you're losing energy. So on the upright bikes, I've really focused on being smooth like that. And I mean, if you watch me, a lot of times it's hard to tell exactly how fast I'm going sometimes, especially from a car or something, because it just looks pretty smooth on the TT bike. So I think that transferred over really nicely. I can see that when people don't have that like discipline or don't have that practice down yet, that it would be an even additional learning curve. You see people, especially on a TT bike sometimes, we saw a couple out there at Sebring that they're just kind of like all over the place. I mean, if you do that at all on the cruise bike, you're going to lose control super quick, which is the same thing on a TT bike. When I first got on a TT bike, it's like this fine tuned machine that if you're just a little bit off, it kind of veers one way or the other. So I think that the smooth pedaling, yeah, is a huge benefit. I think it's a lot of, I think it could also help people teach them how to do it better on their upright bikes, and that would help them on their upright bikes. And then I think the muscle other recruitment has to help somewhat on the upright bikes as well. I heard Amanda Coker talk about when she got on recumbents, she felt like that made her stronger on uprights as well.
Is there a particular muscle that you notice after riding 24 hours on the cruise bike that is different than?
My glutes, for sure. I think
That's
that that's the
interesting.
biggest one. Yeah, I don't know what other people's experiences are. Glutes, a little bit more. Calf, I think. I think that especially since I use shorter cranks on the cruise bike to get my RPM a little bit higher. I'm usually a pretty solid grinder on the upright bike for endurance, but cruise bike, that smoothness is really helpful once again. So I do try and spin a little bit more, and I think that engages my calves a little bit more as well. But my glutes, yeah, huge
That's interesting.
soreness
Yeah.
beyond normal.
I was with you when you did the 12-hour in Phoenix, and that was you had some time on the bike, but really only 300 miles, I think, on the road. And then I was
Yeah,
with you when you did the 24-hour in Sebring, and I noticed how much smoother you were. Probably 30% better this time in at Sebring in terms of being straighter, being it looked to me like you were actually I mean, you did great. Obviously, you set world records in Phoenix, but we noticed then and chatted with you then that we felt like you would get better, and you certainly have gotten better. Talk about that learning, how that. I would like to hear the learning curve. People are very concerned about the learning curve, so it's steep
yeah.
and then it shallows out. So talk about that.
Yeah, so when you guys sent me the bike, you guys were great to work with from the get go about telling me kind of what to expect, what things to try out, what to watch out for. Also, Larry Osland is a champion of cruise bike, and he was a I knew him through the records chair of the WUCA, the World Ultra Cycling Association. So I'd worked with him a couple times on events I had done, and so him and I chatted a lot, and he had a lot of good pointers about what to try, and he got me on the even shorter cranks to try for these bikes. So I had a good leg going in, and I was pretty confident, especially because I feel like I can pick up things pretty quickly. But I got on the bike and immediately felt like this ain't gonna happen. Like the initial thought was like, there's no way I'm gonna figure out how to ride this contraption. And then I just kept thinking, other people do it, they figure it out, I'll get it eventually. But honestly, the first few rides for me were like, no, there's no way this is like it was scary. Like I was like, I'm gonna fly off the road, I'm gonna hurt myself. It didn't help that I had assembled the bike myself. I'm like a okay at home mechanic, not super proficient, but I know how to handle most of my own gear. But the handlebars mount with a plug like a normal bike, a headset plug, and they kept coming loose a little bit. So my steering over the first couple rides was I didn't realize. I just thought that that's how it felt was
It was
loose, and then I
loose.
came to realize a few rides later on that that was. And then when I did that, I feel like I learned the bike a lot quicker. So a good setup would be helpful. To that was my own issue. But even then, that the learning curve was steep, and then like you said, it started to shallow out. And by the time I got to Arizona, I was at the part where it was starting to shallow out, but it was still very steep. Like especially for doing anything on the bike, like grabbing anything or taking my hands off the handlebar, especially at speed. I mean, when you were there for that record, I averaged 26.2. And so when I was grabbing stuff, I was usually going 29 because I was grabbing it with the wind at my back so I could keep the speed going. And so any movement at that point is like just juts you all over the place. You've got to be smooth. And so I was not proficient. We knew that my pedaling was still kind of like waving me all over the place. But that ride, I felt like probably 8 or 10 hours in, I got a lot smoother. And by the time I went back in January and did it again, I think, like you said, if I got 30% better, I was probably already 20% better in January just from riding some more and fixing my position a little bit. And then by the time I got here, yeah, it feels second nature. And in fact, I was telling Bailey on the way out here, I did some training rides along the way as we traveled the 7 days to Florida, and I was telling her I can feel my reflexes catching me the right way. When you
Mm,
first get on the bike and you don't have I mean, everyone's ridden a bike, like an upright bike from when they were a kid. And so if you, not everyone, but like I did. And so you kind of, your body knows how to catch yourself. On the cruise bike, your body doesn't know how to fix anything that happens at first. Like you have to relearn all of that. I think that that's the steepest part of the learning curve is your reflexes are not there for you. Like in fact, this is taking me back. This is really good. I remember first like trying to get my brain to connect that my feet control the steering. Like I had to
Right.
tell myself that over and over and over again because I realized that on an upright bike, when anything like is coming up, you plant yourself with your feet to get ready for it, and you even like hover on your seat over really bumpy stuff. And so my reflexes on the cruise bike when I saw something coming up was to do that, and it would just kick my steering all over the place. And I so I would go into these bumpy sections were like waving and swerving because I was planting my feet and it was pushing the steering all over the place. So I had to disconnect that. That's a really good example of like my reflexes had to learn, hey, when this happens, do this. And I finally felt on the way out here over the 1,000 mile mark, like you
Right.
guys talked about, finally crossing over that when something happened, I could feel my body just catch it the right way. And there were a few times at Sebring course the same thing where, whether it's a gust of wind or someone moves in front of you unexpectedly as you're going to pass them or something, that my body just kind of did the right thing without me having to think through it. And so I can feel that now I'm like you said, I'm getting to a more flatter area and getting into that, okay, now we need to master this over time section.
So the V20c of the cruise bikes is the hardest to learn to ride because you're most laid back and we're evolved to
Yeah.
be upright, right? So
Hmm.
most people don't start on the V20c. They started on our S40, which is much more like a traditional road bike, and you're more upright, and it's just easier to balance. And then when you switch to the V20c, you're still a little. I remember even moving from the S40 to the V20c, thinking, oh yeah, even for me, and I had hundreds of thousands of miles on these bikes. It was like, oh, a little bit different. So you went right into the deep end, but people like you can do it. People, and many, even we have older customers who just start with the V20c and they do all right, but people have to be prepared for that learning curve. Learning to ride it is not hard, but learning to get really good at it takes 1,000 miles or more. And I feel like I'm still improving on it. It's just like anything else. I suppose you put your 10,000 hours
For
in.
sure. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't advise anyone to jump straight into the V20c having
Yeah.
seen. I actually haven't even ridden any of the other models yet,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I can imagine now, like sitting up in different things, like just
Yeah.
your equilibrium would be so much different, your sight line would be so much different, and
Yeah.
I think your feet being at a different height as well would be probably a massive game changer. Like you are very just laying down on that
Right.
V20c,
Right.
and you just don't ever balance in that position in life usually, or do anything athletic normally in that position.
Unless you're a bobsledder or something. So, okay,
Right.
that's great. Let's see. So I wanted to ask you about just cornering. I will say this,
Hmm.
for people who might be listening to this, what we have found is anybody who's ever ridden a motorcycle has no trouble on our bikes. And it might be something about the heavy front end or just the way that they're used to having to balance. So there's something to that. But um, tell me about, cornering, braking, differences between that and your other bikes.
Yeah, so I have rode like road motorcycles, but not a lot of dirt bikes and not a ton of time on them. I can definitely see how that's a very similar feel where similar to a road bike when you're descending, you don't steer, you lean. And on a motorcycle when you're riding, you don't actually like pull as much as you push. You push the opposite to go that way because you're forcing the gravity over. And the cruise bike's a very similar, pushing helps you a lot more than pulling, and your instinct is to pull on the handlebars, especially if you climb and stuff. You're used to just pulling on those things and powering up as you stand and climb. A cruise bike is that push, and motorcyclists know to push. So I think that's probably a piece of it for them. Cornering, especially at speed, like that was probably the most terrifying part at first. Was like to just feel yourself tipping over, and I did slide out a couple times learning. And luckily most of them were not so bad. I had one really bad one when my headset was loose and I lost a bunch of skin. So I also, like, getting back on the bike after that, I was thinking this is where normal people would quit.
Yeah.
This is where normal people would be like, I just lost everything. I think you guys text me afterwards and we're like worried. Okay, he's done. Like I think he's gonna
Well, our
tap out now
experience
because
is an early fall is not good. Nobody wants to fall.
yeah, I mean, I lost a patch of skin this big on my thigh
Yeah.
and all up my arm, and
Right.
so I mean, I was 29 miles an hour and just just whoosh.
Right.
So cornering was terrifying, especially after doing that. And then, like everything else, once you get the hang of it, it's not so bad. The one thing that I am still nervous to do is descending fast, especially like mountain roads. I'm not proficient at that by any means yet, and I want to do some longer road races on it. So I'm going to put some dedicated practice time into learning that. But it is pretty natural. And like you said, you can sit up. And so a lot of times when I'm cornering, I find that sitting up helps me visualize it a little bit better and also feel like I have a little bit more control balance wise
Yeah.
to manage it. So still learning that.
Yeah. Yeah. One tip on descending a mountain road is to think about your weight being low in your butt. So if you
Mm,
think about it that way, then you're much more likely to use the right body English and also less fearful
yeah,
because,
yeah, yeah.
I remind myself I'm low, I'm heavy. And that seems to really help. Like we've done the Blue Ridge Parkway
Nice.
many times, and there's a lot of long descents on there, and I
Yeah,
can get very fearful, but if I remind myself to just be low and heavy in the bike, it's much, I don't know if it's psychological or physical, but it's much more helpful for fast descending. And we have some fast descenders. We have some people have ridden our bikes 60 miles an hour downhill, which I would never do, but I would never ride anything 60 miles an
yeah,
hour. Yeah, so in terms of the early falls you had, that allows a good transition into safety. So we were really disappointed to hear you'd fallen, and we were like, we told him to go slow. But when you fall on a cruise bike, you tend to go off and lose some skin, as you said, but you do not go over the handlebars. So talk about that a little bit, because I know you've had falls on other bikes, and talk about the falling
yeah.
dynamic.
Yeah, so I've broken my collarbone twice on upright bikes, and it's because, like you said, you go over that's just the most natural thing that happens is the bike stops and you keep going. And on the cruise bike, you're so planted with it that if it wherever it goes, you're going with it. You're not really gonna launch away from that thing. So yeah, when I did go down that time, it was just tipping over and then you slide it out. And I've done some research and talked with you guys about how that's the most common, and so you don't normally break bones unless it's a super fast high speed or you hit something in particular, which is great because crashing on an upright bike is like the worst nightmare. And not that crashing on the cruise bike is fun or something you
No.
want to do, but it's kind of a nice in the back of your mind that it's like, okay, I'm less likely to get seriously injured from this. So this feels like a little bit safer ride. Not to mention, in terms of like long term safety, I've thought many times about my upright riding and how much I do, the health consequences. Like I got into running and being active once again in my life because I wanted to be healthy longer. And then I started thinking, well, is this really healthy this long to be on a bike? And I start looking up that all these people end up with neck issues and back issues. And then men end up with some sexual reproduction issues because of the saddle. And I'm sure women end up with similar type of things. I'm just not as familiar with the female side of things. And so the cruise bike I started looking up, and I know that Jim has done a wonderful write up about some of these things in terms of the long term health consequences are so much lower because you're having so many less of those issues. So safety in crashes and then safety long term was like, okay, I want to add this to my repertoire because even if I'm doing most of my writing inside, at least I'm not still in those positions that are just going to be causing me issues for years and years and years. Like I want to do RAM at some point in the future, but thinking of pushing myself to the point of getting that Shermer's neck where your muscles let out on you and the long term consequences, like head, neck, and spine issues are terrifying to me as a cyclist. From either a traumatic injury of getting hit or the long term chronic pain associated with overusing those systems. So cruise bike is super interesting because they can mitigate some of those going forward.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for saying that. That's certainly been our experience. We find that many cyclists come to us after they've pretty much destroyed their backs and their necks, and it's okay. We're happy to sell to anybody, but we wish people would embrace a recumbent platform a
Yeah,
little bit earlier in their cycling careers because it's so fun. I mean, riding a bike is so
yeah.
great, and one of the differences in a recumbent bike, any recumbent bike, and a traditional bike is the view of the road. Will you talk about that?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, Different for sure. So when you're on the upright, I mean, you're for one a couple like a foot or maybe even two higher, depending how high you ride. Um, and in addition to that, you're kind of at like the front of the bike, and it feels like your head is leading the bike, and so you have a different vantage point, and you're seeing things earlier. It feels like as well, where on the cruise bike you're lower and you're all the way at the back of the bike, and so you're seeing your feet out in front of you, and it's just kind of visually strange. And then yeah, because you're so low, it feels like things come up so quick on the bike. I've heard Larry talk about that before. um, I and a lot of cruise bike riders and a lot of recumbents that I see, they end up with their head in this like
Yeah,
backwards position or like leaned back. And I've seen, we've talked about this at length, you and I. Yours ends up being a lot further facing forward, and I found that that back position really made me end up feeling discombobulated getting off the bike. Like whenever I got off for stops or whenever I was done with a long ride, I felt just kind of like dizzy and off and everything. I don't know if there's a biology thing there. So I feel like getting my head a little bit further forward helped me see better and also feel a little bit more equilibrium to my normal upright posture as a human.
yeah.
But the view line is definitely different and concerning at first. I thought I was going to see less things, and I thought I was going to be less confident about seeing the road coming in front of me. But now I zip around on this thing all the time, and I feel like I can see the road plenty good, and I feel very comfortable on it now.
It's good to hear. Yeah, and of our bikes, the obviously the V20c is the most laid back. So when you ride the other bikes, you're sitting up more, and
Yeah.
I tend to see you tend to see a lot more things in the sky, though, don't you? The birds.
Yes. Yeah. True.
So okay, let's see.
Oh, I
Legality.
will
Oh,
add
go
one
ahead.
more thing to that. The I think the challenge there that I have seen is getting used to putting your tires in the right spot when you're like rolling over things, because your head, all the reflexes once again are built up for putting your bike in the right spot in the road bike position. I had to relearn, I feel like, where my tires are in relation to my body to know how to like hit things or not hit things. And then also, and you learn how to do this anyway on a road bike, to like scan the road in front of you better to know what's coming. You especially have to do that on this. You stay very vigilant because you're not going to see a squirrel last second run out in front of your tire because you're not up there to see it. Like you need to see that squirrel as soon as you can so that you can make the adjustments earlier on. So I think you have to be very vigilant on these bikes, not only for that reason, but also you are lower and people are going to see you less often. So I think putting safety equipment on yourself, and then also just my head's on a swivel when I'm on a bike anywhere, just with all the safety concerns of drivers and things like that. But I think especially on these bikes, you got to make sure people see you.
Talk about looking how you see behind you on this bike.
I am ready to buy a rear view mirror for my upright bikes because when I get on my upright bike, I miss my mirror. On the cruise bike, on my handlebars, I have a little clip on mirror, and it just shows me perfectly everything right back behind me right here. That's basically where I see is a little outline of my head and shoulder. And I can see cars, I can see cyclists, I can it's really fabulous because you can crank around, but it's really not great on there. And that going back to our previous discussion about the comparison of TT bike and recumbent, looking behind myself at the end of a 24-hour event is the last thing I want to do on a TT bike. Everything is so tight that like just checking if someone's there or not is excruciating. So it's so nice to have that mirror there that I really am considering getting like the clip-on ones for my helmets for my upright, because not only is it more comfortable, but it just feels so. It's like when you have a radar on your bike computer nowadays that tells you if someone's back there, but the visual cue is fantastic for seeing where. In fact, during the race, I was talking about this, that all of the recumbent riders could see me coming clearly and could make a path for me, where the road bike riders, especially when I'm going 26 and they're going 14, they have no idea that I'm there. And even if they have a radar, they don't know for sure where I am or how to move or anything like that. So it was kind of cool to see that the recumbent riders knew what was happening better behind them.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's a really important. People are concerned about seeing and being seen on a recumbent bike.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience has been I ride all the time with upright riders, that I am more aware of the things, especially coming up behind me, than they are. And furthermore, on a TT bike, um, your neck gets tired and it's easy to drop your head. And Jim's collecting videos of people on time trial bikes just running smack dab into backs of cars and other things because it's because they get tired, and if you and it's just very easy to drop your head.
Yeah.
Though the visibility or your personal sight line on a recumbent, especially on the V20c, is different. I don't think it's less safe. I think it's especially because we all use mirrors, and I actually have a mirror on both sides, so I know who's coming on either side. And
Mm.
I know, and like you said, I noticed that unless an upright cyclist has one of those mirrors in their helmet or whatever, they don't know what's or a radar. They don't know. They have no idea what's behind them. I'm calling out car back, whatever. Thanks for bringing that up. Anything else you want to talk about? And just I mean, I do want to kind of emphasize that it's certainly possible to and absolutely wonderful to be able to ride both platforms. And that
Mm-hmm.
there's probably some, it's not like you're using completely different muscles, but there's some slight differences in the muscles, as you said. You're obviously you're not using your glutes as much on a on a time trial bike as you do on the, even though I never really thought about that. But I do want to also just talk a little bit about racing legality of a of a recumbent bike. Where can't you ride it?
Yeah, you guys did a fascinating history of recumbents, like podcast episode, you and Jim, where you talked about kind of why the bike has been established as what it is for racing from UCI. So I think if anyone wants to dive deeper into this, go check that out, because it has a lot of these things. Because this is not a UCI legal bike, you can't use it in a lot of road races. Most road races wouldn't allow you to use it as like a pack riding thing. And even in like road races where there's a TT, if they're UCI, you still can't even use it for the TT ride because it's not UCI legal. And like I said, there's a lot of history of that, which is sad because I especially think like I was thinking yesterday, or not yesterday, during the ride on Saturday, I was thinking about how was it Lamond who first put the
I
TT
think so. I
bars?
think so.
I was thinking of how he did that and like shocked the world, and I was thinking like how cool it would be if things could change and someone showed up on a cruise bike and just I mean, you're seeing these speeds of these TT bikes, they would be faster for sure on these bikes. Like I said, the arrow is close, but it's enough that it would be considerable. I mean, the pros, they're this close to each other, right? Like there's this is their speeds, this is the average public speeds, right? But the cruise bike would just put them just that little bit ahead, which is what everyone's trying to do. So it's kind of sad that it's not, but for racing legality, yeah, you can't use it in a lot of races like that. But in the ultra community, at least here in the US, it's very accepted. Marek Rapinski, who is here from Poland, he has come to Sebring several years and is a very well-known and accomplished ultracyclist. He said that he's never seen them anywhere except for here. Um, and so he was asking me a bunch of questions. We have pictures of them laying back on it and checking it out when we were visiting with them and everything. And I was saying, well, maybe you ought to go introduce it over there and see how it goes. So it'll be interesting to see as we make some waves here with it, um, if people pick it up and try it out. And I don't know what it would take to ever have it be part of UCI or anything like that, but at least to be more widely acceptable, and also to save people from the years of pain and to give them another way to enjoy bikes, I think is fantastic.
Yeah. Even if you just used it for your long rides or your
Yeah.
adventure riding, we have, as I've mentioned before, the V20c is the time trial bike of our lineup, but we have three other bikes that are just fabulous for long rides, and we really the adventure cycling community in the U.S. has completely embraced cruise bike. And if you're going across the country, all you care about is comfort. If you're spending 60,
Yeah.
60 or 100 miles a day on a bike, you don't, the cruise bike's a
Well,
naturally.
unless you're Strasser or people like
That's
that,
true.
then you sacrifice comfort because
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I was thinking when I was riding a little bit during the race. I was doing my little 3 hours, and as you went by me, you were recording. You had your phone up and you were recording. Uh, and I was reflecting on the amount of relaxation and fun spiritedness, and just that you could do that at 27 miles an hour, that you could take one hand off and think, see me, and then do a little recording of me. I hope that reflects how fun our bike is.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And I've done a lot of work to get here to Sebring. We did the different the December trip and January trip to Phoenix both times to get used to this bike. Hours of changing this, doing that, modifying my headrest and everything, and eventually found out that I had this foot issue that appeared later on in the race. That is something now that we have to work through, and once we nail that, the next one's going to be epic. I can promise you that, because those first 3 to 6 hours, I was like floating on air. My heart rate was perfect. My effort felt perfect. I was doing more watts than I expected. I had to constantly keep checking in with myself about was I pushing it too hard, but it just everything felt right and I felt smooth on the bike. And yeah, I was going 27.8 miles per hour for almost 200 miles until I started to realize that I was having these cramping foot issues that we had to resolve. But it was just a ball, and I love the atmosphere at these races, and I know from talking to people that they all love the camaraderie and seeing other people push themselves. And I was surprised this time how many people reached out and said, "I'm excited to see you pass me so many times." And this just like spirit of sportsmanship and positivity. And so I wanted to capture some people and try and get them on video. And I actually, the first thing I did after the banquet, after I was done, was send those videos out to everyone, because I wanted them to have, because I know how special it is to have a video of you on the bike from this amazing thing. Some of these people, it was their first 24 hour or their longest 24 hour or their hardest in some way. And so it was just really cool to get videos of everyone as we were flying around. And yeah, to feel that comfortable and smooth on the bike was just like floating on air, because it was 6 months that I've had the bike, but it's been 2.5 months of just hard, intense, laser focused work to make that happen. And you just don't get those moments super often. And so I was just trying to live it and
Oh,
be there
that's
and
great.
capture a tiny bit of it to show people.
Well, it was really nice. I loved looking at the video of me as you went by quickly, and I could see you in the rearview mirror, so I was waving at you as you were coming up. But you do not see people on a TT bike in a TT position videoing others. They're just
Yeah.
hunched down.
It's
So
too, it's too much sacrifice.
yeah,
I did a couple at Sebring last year, but like yeah, to do that on the TT bike, you sacrifice your speed goes right out the door.
Mhm.
And so it was kind of cool on the cruise bike that I was a little bit slower, but not enough to not just capture some videos. So
Sure.
it's
It
fun.
was, yeah, it was so fun to have you. And we're really just delighted and excited. We really think you can be the fastest cyclist in the world pretty soon. If not, you're almost there. So, once we get, and I, the point that you make about the little changes that need to be made, that's really important on any bike, I suppose. But my experience on a cruise bike, when I talk to customers, get your head right, get your head right, getting your head right is so important. Get your arm, then next, get your arms right, get your arms in the right position. So there's a lot of little adjustments you can make and get better. It's an art and you've really demonstrated that with the hard work you put into fitting yourself to the bike. We appreciate that. And we're so excited about what you're going to do in the future.
Yeah, I'll tack on two things to that quickly if I can.
Sure.
The head, I would definitely second that. It was weeks of trying different head positions, and I was so nervous to do 24 hours with my head not quite comfortable because it is a really comfortable position, but it doesn't take much of the wrong angle or pressure. Or in my case, I realized that I wasn't extended out fully enough. I was kind of crunched down in, so my head angle was about right, but I feel like it was just like compressing everything. And so when I got myself stretched out and my head in the right position, was just like perfect. Um, so like that's crucial. I was gonna add something else. Man, now I don't remember what it is. We do have, yeah, some really fast rides that we can do on this bike for sure, and yeah, just super excited about it.
Yeah, I am too, and it's be fun to see you switch back and forth. And I mean, your talent and your planning and preparation is amazing. You've got a great crew with Bailey and the kids, and so I mean, the sky's the limit, and we're just delighted. Thanks very much for taking the time to talk to me about the experience. I think this will be helpful for people who are riding traditional bikes and are cruise bike curious. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. I remembered what it was, so I will add
Okay,
it real quick.
all right, good.
Um, Nothing new on race day. One of every person's like marching tunes. And I'll share you a story where I did something new on race day for the first time, and I did it the whole time, and it was dumb, but it paid off. There's an exception to every rule, right? Like I am very much a no black and white. Like there is room for something to be right in some situation and wrong in another situation, but there are some things that are pretty close to black and white, and nothing new on race day is one of those that is
It's
like
a good rule.
extremely close. And if you're gonna change anything, you will most likely pay the price and not benefit from it. But I benefited from a change on race day that I hadn't practiced even the day before because of Drawn Crawford. And so this is just a quick. Did he tell you about this?
I think you did, but I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So he, in the days beforehand, tried a different position with his arms that he found out was quicker. He would do a lap with his arms basically on the drops of the bars where your arms are kind of beside you in this angle, and then he did a lap with his arms on the hoods, which ends up on the cruise bike extending you out kind of like this. And he and Laura both did it the day before the race and came back and said we were faster every lap consistently with our arms up like that, considerably faster. And they were like, at your speed, it's got to be even faster. And I kind of tucked it in the back of my brain, is that something that I'll test a different time? Like I'm not used to riding in that position at all. Like that'd be silly. And but then it kept going off in my head how much faster they were saying it was, and I was like, well, I'll at least try it. Um, and I got out there on course, and I got going in my normal position, and then I put my arms up there, and I'll tell you what, every time I did it, I just watched the speed tick up. Like there's very few changes that you make that you watch your speed actually increase by zero point 0.1 miles per hour. And so when I did that, I would watch it go up zero point 0.1, zero point 0.2, zero point 0.3, zero point 0.4, zero point 0.5
Wow.
minimum, a
Wow.
half a mile per hour faster just by moving my arms into a different position. And I was like, well, we're going full bore on this. I don't know if it's going to pay off, but like if it's that much faster, I got to at least try and see. So it took a little bit of learning. It really actually wasn't too much different because it's a very similar mechanism. What it did do is that it burnt my forearms out like crazy because I hadn't trained holding the bike in that position. And so the little bit different muscle recruitment like just killed some of my arm muscles, but not too bad during the race that it was like hurting me. Just afterwards, they were just completely shot. But it was the nothing new on race day. But I did it, and like I said, it was crazy. Like I'd put my arms down and put them up and just watch the speed go up, and I was like, this is wild. The only thing that I could compare it to is your head position on a TT bike. Like I was saying with that scrunched over, I can watch my speed go up on a TT bike if I turtle my head in like that, and I can feel the air go over me smoother. And this was the exact same effect. I could feel the air travel over my whole body completely differently by having my arms up. I think not only did it make me narrower down top, but I think it really created a clear path for the air to just soar right over me. So I'm excited to continue to make little experiments and do those things. And Larry's a big person for aero, and I want to get some of these records as fast as we possibly can to show just how capable people are, as well as the bike is itself. But that was a silly story of nothing new on race day. There is an exception to pretty much every rule, I guess.
That's funny. Yeah, if you end up, so your hands are on the hoods of the, you ended up with your hands on the hoods,
Yeah.
basically. So you can tilt the hoods in
Yep.
a little bit, not even, or you can change the hood position
Yeah.
if you're going to put your hands on the hood and make it
Yeah.
maybe
So
even
my
more
hoods
narrow.
are like just barely clearing my knees. And
Okay,
so they're
so
in
there's
as
no
much as
room.
they can
Right,
go. And they were about as forward as they can go to keep
right,
everything flat. So
right,
I think actually it was set up right for me to do it without me thinking that I was going to do it.
right.
I think it could be played with a little bit. Like I think if you got yourself fully extended out, would be the most aero, but I don't think that would give you enough play to actually do anything. You probably have to have some bend.
Yeah.
But I mean, you guys have had this in a wind tunnel. I'm curious if did you guys test if it was faster arms down or arms
We
up?
did. We didn't. We didn't. We're testing a lot of other things. We didn't test that. When
Hmm.
John Crawford's building a wind tunnel, so we'll have more access to that. Having a wind tunnel is great, and the
Yeah,
fun thing about the cruise bike is it's all about aerodynamics. So
yeah,
making tiny little adjustments, you're not going to be more uncomfortable. I mean, you said your forearms were sore, but you'll develop those muscles quickly. So yeah,
yeah,
it's a
for sure.
fun, it's a fun kind of, you automatically do this on a cruise bike. You automatically make tiny little changes to make yourself more aero, and yeah, that
Yeah.
makes it fun. All right.
Well,
Well,
anyone looking for
thanks.
speed on the V20c, I'm a huge sharer. I share all my like nutrition and training
That's
and everything. So this is another thing that I'm not going to keep this secret to myself. Try that, and I mean, my estimate is 15 to 20 watts from just
Wow,
moving your arms, like
that's
a
significant.
crazy amount.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, yeah. Each and people are going to be different, based on their anatomy and so forth. And but
right.
yeah,
I think it
the
was even more for John because he has some wide handlebars,
handlebars.
and
Yeah,
so when he went up on the hoods, it really narrowed him. It was
hmm
less for Laura and I because our handlebars are already narrow.
right. Mine are very narrow too, but it's. I guess
Hmm.
the most important learning here is try lots of different things. Just try
Yeah,
things and take notes and notice. So, Jim and I do. We do aerodynamic testing with CDA with a formula, so it's not as accurate and it takes a long time. So it'll be fun when John has his wind tunnel set up and we can just say, try
yeah,
this. So little tiny changes.
yeah,
All right. Well, I know you got to get going. I really appreciate you taking the time. And just, thank you for showing what cruise bike can do. So one of the comments on our Facebook page said, "Oh, you got a good engine now." And I'm like, "Yeah, we do,
yeah.
we do."
I think that was
Yeah,
from John Schlitter too. So
yeah, 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 yeah. So, all right. Thanks so much, Matthew. Have
yeah,
safe travels home. Love to Bailey and the boys, and
thank
we'll
you,
talk soon.
thank you, and thanks.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for making the time as well to have the conversation. Happy to.
Yeah. All right.